For 88 years, Amelia Earhart's aircraft has rested somewhere beneath the Pacific Ocean's surface. No one has been able to locate it. The United States government invested $4 million in 1937 and returned empty-handed. Robert Ballard, the explorer who discovered the Titanic, made his attempt and came up short. However, in late 2023, a team equipped with a $9 million underwater drone detected something at 16,000 feet below the surface. What appeared on that sonar image caused them to halt all other operations. And what researchers currently believe was contained within that wreckage doesn't align with anything we've been told regarding her final journey. The established narrative might be incorrect. Amelia Mary Earhart came into the world on July 24, 1897, in the peaceful town of Atchison, Kansas, and nothing during her formative years hinted she would someday disappear at the peak of her celebrity. Her father, Samuel Edwin Earhart, and her mother, Amy Otis Earhart, brought her up in a household where inquisitiveness was nurtured. Yet the heavens did not immediately beckon her. At 10 years old, she observed her first aircraft, an antiquated contraption of wire and timber that resembled a damaged machine more than an aspiration, and she passed by it without significant interest. That transformed years afterward in Toronto during 1918, when she witnessed a stunt pilot descend directly toward her during an exhibition. Those surrounding her recoiled, but she remained motionless. Something altered within her as the aircraft thundered overhead, and from that instant the concept of flight took root in her consciousness. Slightly more than 2 years afterward, on December 28, 1920, Frank Hawks transported her into the sky for the first time in California, and the instant the wheels departed the earth, she experienced a truth awakening inside her. She documented later that she understood she had to fly, and that sensation propelled her into instruction on January 3, 1921, with an accomplished aviator named Anita Snook. Every minute in the Curtiss Jenny cost her $1, so she gathered together what she could and absorbed knowledge as rapidly as possible. By December 1921, she obtained her pilot's license from the National Aeronautic Association, becoming the first woman and the 17th pilot of any gender to accomplish it. One achievement merged into the next as she drove herself forward. By 1928, she traversed the Atlantic as a passenger in the Fokker Friendship and became the first woman to complete the journey by air, but she recognized that the genuine challenge would arrive only when she piloted it alone. That instant materialized on May 20, 1932, when she departed from Harbor Grace, Newfoundland at 7:12 p.m. in her red Lockheed Vega. 14 hours and 56 minutes later, she touched down in a farmer's field near Londonderry, Northern Ireland, after confronting ice, fire from a fractured exhaust, and an altimeter that malfunctioned at the most critical time. The flight encompassed 2,026 miles, and the world perceived her as someone who would not retreat. Distinctions soon followed, including the Distinguished Flying Cross, the Gold Medal of the National Geographic Society, and the French Cross of Knight of the Legion of Honor. Between 1930 and 1935, she established 7 women's speed and distance records and became the first person to fly solo from Hawaii to mainland California on January 11, 1935, which meant she had crossed both the Atlantic and Pacific independently. Throughout all of this, she maintained a life that blended independence and partnership. On February 7, 1931, she married publisher George Palmer Putnam after he proposed 6 times, yet she made it evident she required freedom. She composed a letter before the wedding stating he must release her if they discovered no happiness within a year. She retained her maiden name and eliminated the word obey from the vows. He comprehended her spirit and helped coordinate her public career without attempting to restrict her. Eventually, she conceived something more ambitious than anything she had undertaken, a world flight around the equator of roughly 29,000 miles. To accomplish this, she acquired a Lockheed Electra 10E Special on July 24, 1936, her 39th birthday. By the Purdue Research Foundation, cost $80,000 and became known as the Flying Laboratory. Its wings extended 55 feet and its length reached 38 feet 7 inches. It stood 10 feet 1 inch high and carried 2 Pratt & Whitney Wasp engines that delivered 600 horsepower each at takeoff. Engineers expanded the fuel capacity from a standard 200 to 260 gallons to a remarkable 1,151 gallons distributed across 12 tanks. Clarence Johnson, who later designed the SR-71 Blackbird, supervised many of these modifications, and even the windows were altered so Fred Noonan, her navigator, could take clear celestial readings. The first attempt to circle the world commenced on March 17, 1937, with Earhart flying west from Oakland. After 3 days, the attempt concluded when the Electra ground looped at Luke Field in Hawaii during takeoff, spinning nearly 200 degrees and collapsing its landing gear. Repairs sent the aircraft back to Lockheed in Burbank. She attempted again on June 1, 1937, this time heading east from Miami. Over the subsequent weeks, Earhart and Noonan crossed South America, Africa, the Red Sea region, India, Southeast Asia, and Australia. By June 291,937, they landed in Lae, New Guinea, after covering 22,000 miles in 21 days. Only one extensive stretch remained, and it was the most perilous. Noonan was not merely along for the journey. Born April 4, 1893 in Cook County, Illinois, he matured on the sea. He departed home at 13 to join the Merchant Marine and rounded Cape Horn 7 times, 3 under sail. By 1926, he held a master's license, and Pan American Airways employed him as an aviation navigator. He charted the Clipper routes across the Pacific and helped navigate the first commercial trans-Pacific flight from Alameda to Manila on November 22, 1935. He stood just above 6 feet with blue eyes and dark auburn hair and had flown at least 21 times for Pan Am in 1936, including 5 round-trip Pacific crossings. He departed Pan Am in late 1936, hoping to establish a navigation school after the Earhart flight. He had married Mary B. Martinelli on March 27, 1937, only a few months before the flight that would define the remainder of his story. Their final destination was a speck in the Pacific known as Howland Island. It stretched only 6,500 feet in length and 1,600 feet in width, rising a mere 10 feet above the water. The distance from Lae to Howland was 2,556 miles, which meant 18 to 20 hours in the air. On July 2, 1937, at 10 a.m. local time, which was 0 GMT, Earhart and Noonan lifted off from the rough 1,000-foot runway with around 1,100 gallons of fuel. Weather was superior to the day before, yet cloud layers, headwinds, and scattered storms awaited along the route. These conditions obscured the stars Noonan relied on, diminishing his ability to confirm their exact line of travel. The aircraft carried a Western Electric Model 13C transmitter with 3 fixed frequencies, 500 kHz for distress, 3,105 kHz for night use, and 6,210 kHz for daytime. A Bendix MN-20 loop antenna sat atop the fuselage, but it could only take accurate bearings between 150 and 1,800 kHz, a limitation Earhart never fully comprehended. The trailing wire antenna that once extended 250 feet had been removed to save weight, which weakened their signal even more. As they moved toward the tiny island, one gap led to another, and every missing connection made the search ahead harder. The final transmissions came through the air like slow breaths, and each one carried a weight that still sits heavy in aviation history. The U.S. Coast Guard cutter Itasca sat near Howland Island waiting to guide Amelia home, sending out homing signals and even smoke so she could spot them, while Chief Radioman Leo G. Bellarts kept his headphones tight as her voice drifted in and out through the static. At 18:15 GMT, which was around 6:15 in the morning on Howland, her message arrived with a strength that almost rang in his ears. She said they must be near but could not see anything, and that their gas was running low, and that they had never been able to reach Itasca by radio. She said they were flying at 1,000 feet. The signal was S5, which meant she had to be close, and yet she never heard a single reply. Then 1912 GMT came, and her voice broke through again with the same urgency. She repeated that they must be on top of the island but still could not see it, and again said that their fuel was nearly gone. She still could not hear them. By 1928 GMT, she asked for a bearing, told them she would make noise in the microphone, even whistled into it, and said they were about 100 miles out. The transmissions were too short for the direction finder to lock on, and the silence on both ends created a kind of panic no one could hide. The last confirmed transmission came at 2014 GMT, which was 8:43 in the morning on Howland. She said they were on the line 157 to 337 and would repeat the message on 6,210 kilocycles. She said they were running north and south. The line she mentioned was a navigational sun line that cut through both Howland Island and Gardner Island, which is Nikumaroro today, about 350 miles southeast. She never said which direction they went on that line. After 20 hours and 14 minutes in the air, Amelia Earhart and Fred Noonan vanished into a part of the ocean that offered no clues. The search that followed became something no one had witnessed before. President Franklin D. Roosevelt ordered it himself, and the government poured money and manpower into what became the most intense and most expensive rescue effort in U.S. history up to that point. For 16 days, from July 2 to July 18, 1937, they spent around $4 million, which would be about $88 million today. Time magazine reported daily costs of almost $250,000. 9 vessels took part, including the Itasca, the battleship USS Colorado with its O-3U Corsair seaplanes, and the aircraft carrier USS Lexington with about 62 to 63 aircraft. More than 4,000 people searched almost 250,000 square miles of ocean, which is about the size of Texas. When it ended, the Navy concluded she had run out of fuel and crashed into the Pacific. On January 5, 1939, Judge Clarence Elliott Craig in Los Angeles declared Amelia legally dead in absentia and waived the usual 7-year waiting period because nothing about her disappearance fit the normal rules. 5 minutes after that, he appointed George Putnam executor of her estate, which was valued at more than $10,000. Even then, the mystery refused to fade. In 1985, Richard E. Gillespie and Pat Thrasher founded the International Group for Historic Aircraft Recovery, which we know as TIGAR, and they began piecing together what they called the castaway hypothesis. Since 1989, they have run 12 expeditions to Nikumaroro Island and have spent more than $5 million chasing the idea that Earhart and Noonan flew southeast along the 157 to 337 line, landed on the reef near the wreck of the SS Norwich City, tried to send radio signals for several days, and then died as castaways when the plane was eventually dragged into the sea. The story picked up strength when Gerald B. Gallagher, a British colonial officer on the island in 1940, found 13 bones and a skull along with a woman's shoe, a sextant box made for a Brandis Navy surveying sextant, and a Benedictine bottle. He sent the bones to Fiji because he felt there was a slight chance they could be hers. In April 1941, Dr. D.W. Hoodless studied them and decided they belonged to a short, stocky European male about 5 feet 5.5 inches tall. Then the bones vanished during World War II, leaving only Hoodless's measurements behind. In 2018, Dr. Richard Jantz used those measurements with modern methods and the forensic program Fortis to compare the data with a large sample group. He concluded that Earhart matched the Nikumaroro bones more closely than 99% of individuals in the sample. He estimated her bone lengths from photographs and her clothing measurements kept at Purdue University and published his findings in Forensic Anthropology. His view was simple: until someone proves the bones are not hers, the most convincing argument is that they might be. Tygar also collected scattered artifacts over the years, including a jar matching Dr. C.H. Barry's freckle ointment, which mattered because Earhart disliked her freckles, along with pieces of a woman's shoe with a cat's paw replacement heel and an aluminum panel they believed matched a repair made to her Electra in Miami. Critics pushed back quickly. Tom Crouch from the Smithsonian said he did not think Tygar had found anything solid, and in 2015 Pamela Cross and Richard Wright reanalyzed the bone data and said the remains were likely those of a robust middle-aged man. The search took another turn in 2019 when oceanographer Robert Ballard, the man who found the Titanic in 1985, led a 3-week expedition to Nikumaroro with National Geographic. He used the 211-foot E-5 Nautilus, along with ROVs like Hercules, surface vehicles, drones, and even bone-sniffing dogs. Ballard said he had been drawn to Earhart's story his whole life and felt almost a personal connection because he was born in Kansas just like she was. His team scanned the steep underwater cliffs, looked across the reef, and searched every path the wreckage might have taken, but they ended the expedition without a single clear clue. Allison Fundus, the chief operating officer, said they believed they would have found the plane early in the mission if it had been there at all. The documentary Expedition Amelia premiered on October 20, 2019, and offered the same conclusion: nothing they found could be proven to belong to Amelia or her plane. Even so, Ballard refuses to let the mystery rest. He always says the plane exists and he intends to find it someday, and he believes that this mystery is not an illusion like the stories of sea monsters. It is real, and he thinks the answer is still waiting somewhere out there in the Pacific. Nauticos has spent years trying to understand what happened to Amelia Earhart, and their work keeps drawing them back to the same idea that her plane ran out of fuel near Howland Island and slipped into the Pacific. The company sits in Cape Porpoise, Maine, and ever since 2002 they have poured themselves into this search. Under the lead of Dave Jourdan, they gathered more than 27,000 pages of research and scanned close to 1,860 square miles of seafloor at depths between 12,000 and 18,000 feet. They worked closely with Elgin Long, a former Boeing 747 captain who spent 35 years studying her final flight. His 1999 book with his wife laid out the most complete version of the crash and sink explanation, and Nauticos used mathematical models of Earhart's radio calls to sharpen their focus on where the plane might rest. Jourdan often tried to describe the challenge, saying it was like trying to find a contact lens on a football field in the dark while holding a tiny penlight. It sounded impossible. Yet he believed careful and patient work could still reveal something. Now they are planning a 4th expedition for 2026 and seeking between $8 million and $10 million to make it happen. Deep Sea Vision stepped into the story with a very different kind of energy. Tony Romeo, who once served as a U.S. Air Force intelligence officer and graduated top of his class of 992 cadets in 2002, sold his real estate business in Charleston so he could fund an $11 million search mission. His team left Tarawa, Kiribati, on September 8, 2023, carrying a 16-member crew and a bright orange underwater vehicle nicknamed Miss Millie. This Kongsberg-Huygens 6000 cost $9 million and could dive to around 19,700 feet, operate for up to 72 hours, and scan swaths more than a kilometer wide with its high SAS-132 sonar. Across roughly 90 days, they covered about 5,200 square miles, which they like to say was more than all earlier searches combined. They focused on something called the dateline theory from 2010, proposed by Liz Smith, a former NASA employee. It suggested that navigator Fred Noonan may have forgotten to adjust their calendar when crossing the international dateline, causing a 60-mile navigational mistake that pushed them west. Around day 32 in October 2023, the Huygens captured an image that slipped by unnoticed until the very last day of the journey. A corrupted file forced the team to dig deeper, and when they did, they saw an outline in the sonar that looked very much like an airplane at around 16,000 feet depth. It was sitting nearly 100 miles west of Howland Island, and no one had ever searched that area. On January 27, 2024, they shared the image on Instagram. Romeo said it would be hard to convince him it was not an airplane and not Amelia's airplane because nothing else from that era should be in that spot, and the sonar even hinted at wings and a twin tail. He believed the shape suggested she may have tried to land gently on the water. Skeptics responded almost immediately. Nauticos pointed out that the wings in the image looked swept back while the Electra had straight wings, and they also noted the missing engine nacelles. Still, Deep Sea Vision returned on November 1, 2024, hoping to gather better images. They waited about 24 hours and finally saw what the sonar was really showing. On November 6, 2024, Romeo shared the news. The shape was only a rock formation. He said it was the cruelest shape nature could have made because it looked almost arranged on purpose. He admitted he was disappointed but accepted it as part of life. The team searched more than 1,000 additional square miles after that, raising their total to around 7,700 square miles. They said they still expect to find her plane at some point, though their next mission might not happen until 2026. While these searches continue, the same three theories keep circling through conversations about what happened. The crash and sink idea remains the official view of the U.S. government and is supported by the Smithsonian. Dorothy Cochrane at the National Air and Space Museum calls it the most straightforward answer, since the plane likely fell somewhere along the 157 to 337 line of position at depths between 12,000 and 18,000 feet. Another theory is the Nikomaroro castaway idea from Tigar, which claims she landed on Gardner Island and survived for days or even weeks before dying. Rick Gillespie insists the mystery is solved through the bones and artifacts found there in 1940. Then there is the Japanese capture theory, which refuses to disappear even though it has been disproven many times. The History Channel tried to support it in 2017 with a photograph, but blogger Kota Yamano proved the photo came from a 1935 Japanese travel book 2 years before she vanished. Besides that, the Marshall Islands are about 800 miles northwest of Howland, well beyond what the Electra could reach with low fuel. The radio signals heard after her disappearance still haunt people who study the case. Dozens of transmissions were reported, and Tigar judged 57 of them as credible or even beyond reasonable doubt. Many lined up with low tide at Nikomaroro, which would have kept the port engine above water long enough for the radio to function. The most powerful story comes from Betty Clenk Brown, who was 15 in 1937 and lived in St. Petersburg, Florida. On July 5th, she used her father's shortwave radio and heard a woman who said she was Amelia Earhart. Betty listened for 1 hour and 45 minutes and wrote down fragments in her notebook. She heard a woman and a man, and the man sounded confused or injured. They kept repeating New York City, which Tigar thinks may have been a reference to the SS Norwich City shipwreck on Nikomaroro's reef. Betty kept her notes hidden for more than 60 years. Her story later inspired a multimedia choral work called Betty's Notebook, which became the first classical music NFT and sold for $375,000 in 2021. Her family also had views on the mystery. Amy Earhart Klepner, Amelia's niece, died in December 2024 at 93 years old. She finished a book about her aunt at age 90, and it will come out in early 2026. She said she had read everything about her aunt's disappearance and believed that Amelia and Fred simply ran out of fuel within 100 miles of Howland Island. She never felt convinced by any of the other theories and said solving the mystery never mattered much to her. The technology used today keeps improving, and the Kongsberg-Huygens 6000 shows how far things have come. It can explore 98% of the ocean floor and produce sonar images detailed enough to show aircraft parts at about 5 by 5 centimeters. It can operate for up to 15 days and travel close to 2,200 kilometers on a single mission. Leo Murphy at Embry-Riddle says the key will always be the big Pratt & Whitney engines, because even if the plane has broken apart after decades in saltwater, those engines will stay put. With deep-sea vision scanning 7,700 square miles and Nauticos clearing 1,860 more, along with the work of other teams, huge parts of the Pacific have already been eliminated. The search area keeps shrinking, and the tools grow sharper each year. People still care about Earhart because her story never closed. T.J. Boisseau says her disappearance created the perfect shape for a legend since she vanished out of sight instead of dying where people could see. Doris Rich said no plan could have made her more famous than the mystery that wrapped around her after July 2, 1937. Yet her impact reaches far beyond her final flight. She helped create the 99s, a group for women pilots, and built a clothing line, wrote best-selling books, and served as aviation editor for Cosmopolitan. She even worked at Purdue University as a counselor for women's careers. The Amelia Earhart Fellowship from Zonta International has given more than $11 million to women pursuing aerospace since 1938. Dr. Richard Jantz once said that if the bones found on Nikamororo were not hers, then they belonged to someone almost exactly like her. You could say the same about the people who search for her plane. They share her persistence and her refusal to give up when the path is unclear. Tony Romeo often says she wants to come home and calls her America's favorite missing person. Somewhere in the Pacific at depths close to 4 miles, the Electra still waits. After 88 years, the possibilities have narrowed. The technology is ready. The determination remains. Whether it comes through Deep Sea Vision's next mission, Nauticos' 2026 expedition, or future explorers who have not yet joined the story, the mystery that has followed Amelia Earhart for so long may finally find its answer.